All right. Thank you for joining us for the COTESOL Membership Lounge's Monday AMA session. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Amanda Gillis-Furutaka, who is joining us from Kyoto, Japan. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Yeah.
It's great to see you here. How's everything going in Japan right now?
Um, it's well, from the point of view of a university teacher, it's absolutely exhausting because many of the universities are trying to phase back in face-to-face classes, but many of the students, this is the second semester of the year, many of the students are living with their families and scattered all over Japan and can't come for one face-to-face class a week all the way to Kyoto. So we're having to provide online, on demand, plus
Oh, wow.
in-class face-to-face. So we're doing
Oh my
double
gosh.
duty.
That's crazy. That it must be really exhausting.
It is, yes. I mean, it was exhausting last semester having to get used to the new online platforms that we were using, thinking about how to restructure our classes,
Mhm.
improving on what we were doing so that our teaching was
Wow.
being effective enough,
Mhm.
and dealing with Zoom fatigue and of the students because
Right.
a lot of their teachers were just going for what I would say is the easy option, which is just Zooming live, just lecturing live, and
Mhm.
not thinking through how to make it interactive for the students and using breakout rooms and learning
Right.
those techniques. Um, but yeah, and some classes have been so difficult to convert. For example, I teach a British culture class and I use movies
Oh, that's
because
cool.
that's the way the students can relate to
Yeah.
the issues like adoption and crime and punishment, death penalty. I mean,
Right. Oh my.
watching a movie, yeah, abortion, yeah, um,
Right.
it makes the issues real, and they can learn about British values and a bit of British social history. Problem is, I can't stream them through Zoom. It's
Ah,
copyright protected.
right.
So I'm spending hours scouring YouTube for clips and then writing summaries of the bits that they're not going to be able to see.
Oh my. Yeah, that's
So
tough.
yeah, so trying to get around the copyright restrictions when you're using material like that, which is fine to use in a classroom.
Mhm.
We use the expensive versions of the DVDs so that we can use them for education purposes, but trying to do this on an online platform is, yeah,
Oh,
very
that's
time
crazy.
consuming.
Right. Do you
Yeah.
have Netflix there or something? You could have one of those Netflix watch parties. I don't know how they work. I
Well,
know they
yeah, so
exist.
we have Netflix, but not the students have an account.
Right.
Yeah,
But I don't
not
think
all
you need
students
an
have an
account.
account, so we can't expect them.
Do you
Yeah,
need an
yeah.
account for the watch parties though? Maybe not. I didn't think you
Do
did.
you need to pay? You
You
need to
do.
pay a subscription for Netflix, for Amazon Prime. Yes, yeah.
But for
So
the
it's
watch parties too? I thought you were able to
sorry.
share those. Okay. They have this feature called Watch Party, though, that I thought was supposed to be you didn't need a
Well,
subscription as
it's
long
not
as your
for the
friend was.
films. The trouble is, do they have the films that I'm using?
That's a
And
good question.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they don't because I'm using British films which are not necessarily mainstream, but
Oh, wow.
very good for my purposes.
Can you tell us which movies you're using?
So this semester, we started with The Queen, which is about the death of Princess Diana and the response of the British people and the very steep learning curve for Queen Elizabeth II and for the newly elected Prime Minister Tony Blair to deal with a situation where the public were demanding a public outpouring of grief from the royal family and remorse for what had happened. And the royal family couldn't understand because for them, you do not show your emotions on your sleeve. They should keep a stiff upper lip, and this was not a public matter. This was a private family matter, and so it's very interesting.
Fascinating.
It raises those issues of what is the role of the royal family. Uh,
Right.
And now we're doing Billy Elliot, which is about,
Oh, that's lovely.
the young boy who wants to be a ballet dancer from working
Right.
coal mining. So that brings in all types of issues like workers' unions, striking, what it means to go on strike. It's the longest strike that was ever held in the UK. It lasted a year, bar about 3 or 4 days. And of course, then gender stereotypes. Yeah. And then we've got coming up, we've got Calendar Girls. I don't know if you know that one.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
It's based on a true story about a bunch of women in Yorkshire in their 40s to 70s who belonged to the Women's Institute, which is an institution that actually originally started in Canada, but it's a kind of for women to meet and do things together. And it's usually very ladylike, but they decide that they need to raise more money than usual because they want to support cancer research. And they decide to make a calendar of nude photos of themselves, but artistic. Yeah. And this really happened. And it
Wow.
was a huge sellout. And they ended up making a film because it was such a big hit, this calendar. And again, it raises all kinds of issues like, what is and isn't acceptable for your mother and your grandmother to do.
Wow. That sounds like it
Yeah,
would raise some fascinating conversations.
it does. And because that is so different to Japanese society,
Mm.
the students are quite amazed. We're going to be doing, yes, Secrets and Lies, which is
Wow.
one of my favorite directors. And it's about adoption, and it's about cross-racial issues as well. So the story is, it's a Mike Leigh film,
Mhm.
and a young woman of color in Britain, of Caribbean origins, knows that she was adopted by her Caribbean ethnically origined family, but she knows nothing about her birth mother. And at the beginning of the film, her own adoptive mother has just died, and her father died some years ago. And she feels that she really wants to know her true identity and starts to search for her biological mother. And shock and horror, her biological mother is white, she was only 16 at the time. And when she gave her daughter up for adoption, and she didn't want to look at the child when it was born, and she has no idea that her daughter is black.
Oh, wow.
And so,
Wow.
yes, and so they arranged to meet up, and yeah, and it's all about how they get to know each other and acceptance, and also so the white mother's family accepting this daughter. And the irony is that the mother is a factory worker, living in a very rundown terraced house, working class. She has another daughter, but she has never married. The second daughter is white. And then the daughter that she gave away for adoption was bright and intelligent, and it was a middle class family who adopted her, and they gave her a university education, and she's an ophthalmologist. She has her own practice, and
Wow.
so she's up in upper middle class, black, and her
Wow.
biological mother is white. Yeah. And middle working class. Yeah. So it's full of issues, and it really shows how the British social class system is very complex. Yeah.
Wow. That's really fascinating. How long have you been teaching this course?
Oh, a long time now. I mean, I update the movies when a new one comes out that is really good. Like last semester, I used the one about John Lennon,
Oh, wow.
Nowhere Boy. Yes, so that's really nice for the beginning of youth culture,
Oh,
because it shows lifestyle of John Lennon and other teenagers in the 1950s, as well. Of course, it's a biography of him, biopic. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. So when new films come out, I put them in and then recycle them. So I have about 20 films that I recycle. Actually, more.
Oh,
This
wow.
year was Chariots of Fire, which
Okay.
comes in every 4 years because
Oh,
with the
that's
Olympic
interesting.
cycle. Yes,
That
yeah.
must keep it fresh for you, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
What majors are taking this class?
So this class is it's aimed towards our English majors, but
Okay.
basically any student can take it if they want to.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
what are some of the problems you've encountered over the years that I'm sure you've streamlined the class through, its various iterations,
Mm.
but what are some challenges you've encountered in the years, besides having to do it all by distance, that you've
Ah,
overcome?
well, what I've noticed, it's a very popular class. It's a 2 credit class, and they know they're going to watch movies. So a lot of students sign up, but they don't realize that actually I'm expecting quite a lot of work out of them. And they have to, when we're doing it in class, they have to write 2 long reports. There are 5 films. They have to choose 2 of the films to write a report on. And there's an exam at the end, which is based on the bits of the film that we didn't watch in class. So they have to watch all 5 films to be able to get a good grade on the class. Now we're doing this online. I can't I can't do an exam online. And so it's by report and by weekly assignments, like worksheets.
Oh,
So
wow.
we go, I'm recording PowerPoint slide talks to explain the background of the movies. And they have like activities to do based on what I've said, and the clips that I can find on YouTube, and they watch them or read my summary, and then they answer questions or correct mistakes or organize the events as they happened. I have all kinds of tools in my bag to
Yeah.
basically provide them with a summary of the whole film so they actually know what happens in the whole film, but they have to do a lot of the work themselves. So they're building the summary themselves. And then, so they have those weekly worksheets. And of course, this is a lot of grading time, creating time and grading time for me. But the outcome is that only the really keen students last semester and this semester are staying the course. And
Oh,
so
wow.
usually it's like 80 to 100 students,
Wow.
but it's been going down. So last semester it ended up about 35. And this semester I'm probably going to have maybe 25 to 30 who might stay the course. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's doable.
Right. That seems more reasonable
But
for feedback,
they're getting
definitely.
so much more out of it because they're actually really having to pay attention because they're doing these weekly worksheets. But when it's a very big class, I can't monitor how much concentration everybody is giving
Mhm.
to the materials in the lesson. But what is nice in class is that very often some of our international students, the exchange students, join the class because they're not from the UK and they're interested in British culture. And that's great because then the discussion parts, the discussion topics of, like, for example, um, on the adoption. Yeah. So if you found out that you were adopted, would you like to meet your biological mother?
Oh,
Yes. What
interesting.
would be why would it be a good idea and why might it not be a good idea? And so that kind of creates a lot of discussion. Yeah.
That's
So
fascinating.
yes. So there are pros and cons. I think the
Right.
bottom line is the students who are really interested will put the work in anyway, and they will be getting a lot out of it.
Right.
Um, the students who are taking the class online and are not going to put the work in are just not going to pass it.
Mm.
They're just not going to
That's pretty
get the point.
typical, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that
So,
sounds fun.
mm,
So, what made you interested in teaching this course about British culture, or did your university just kind of tap you for it, and you got
well,
to coordinate something
um,
around that?
a long time ago, when I was employed by the university full time, and well, no, actually, when I was employed by the university part time, um, this was back in 1992. And it takes you back nearly 30 years, 28 years, yeah. 1992, I had been working at the British Council
Mm.
and I was thinking of staying on long term. I had just finishing up my MA. And so the university offered me one day a week, 3 classes, and one of them was teaching British culture because I was from the UK. Of
Logical.
course, yes. If I was a language teacher, of course I could teach about culture. So I kind of was thrown in the deep end, but it paid off because it seems I did a good job. And the next year they offered me a tenured position to carry on
That's
teaching British
fantastic.
culture. And so I've been doing this for 28 years, but I didn't start with films because we didn't have the technology in the classroom.
Oh, sure.
And yes, but so it's evolved over the years. And yes, I think I've got it down to a fine art now. Yeah, five films a semester is just right, 3 weeks per film. And I make sure that there is stuff that's going to the boys are going to enjoy as well as the girls. So our last film this semester is Lock, Stock and Two Smoking
Oh,
Barrels.
that's fantastic.
Yes, the guys really enjoy. Yeah, the girls do too.
Do you put the subtitles on for all of these?
Yes.
I was going to say, especially for that one. That's
yeah. This is a culture. Well, Billy Elliot as well. Yorkshire.
right.
No,
Oh,
it's
sure.
Durham. Yes, it's Durham English. I miss some of it. Yeah,
Right.
but no, it's not a language class. It's a culture. It's the
Sure.
content class. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So do you actually make it back to the UK very often?
Well, when the children were small, we used to go every second year because it was 5 of us in our family. That's quite expensive to go.
Right.
Yeah, but plus my parents' house wasn't big enough for us to stay there. They used to let us have the house and then go to a hotel down the road. But we used to go every 2 years, yeah, and stay with my family, stay with friends who had big houses. My parents passed away, my mum in 2011, my dad 2015, and my brother 2017. So I really don't have an urgent need to go back. I haven't been back since 2016. Yeah. My brother didn't want a big funeral, so I didn't go back for his funeral, and the timing was not right anyway. So, yeah. So, but I do have friends, yeah, and I need to go and pick up materials as well because I teach another class of British media, and so I need up-to-date magazines and newspapers and other media products that I can only get there.
Well, it must be challenging to stay on top of contemporary popular culture from overseas, although easier now, I guess, now that the internet is so
now that there's so
widespread.
much on the internet, it's a lot easier. Yes, yeah. And I actually really enjoy teaching. Yeah, so I was just making my seminar class earlier today for this week, and lots of YouTube clips of British comedy shows. We were talking about stereotypes and how useful stereotypes are in comedy. And so looking at different kinds of stereotypes of the bullshit, that's a British expression, the objectionable teenager.
And wait, how did you say that originally? The bullshit?
Bullshit, yes.
Oh, okay. And that means objectionable teenager.
Bad tempered, yes.
Oh, I love that. Oh,
yes. So yes, teenagers, Monty Python's Hell's Grannies, and stereotypes of racial minorities like Indians. There's a hilarious one with an Indian couple where the husband comes home and the wife has just got the exam results and is saying, no, our son, do you know what A levels are?
I've heard of them. I'm kind of familiar.
Yes. So usually students take 3 or 4 different subjects in A levels, and their son has taken 5, and he has 4 grade A's and 1 grade B, and her husband goes through the roof. Well, he hasn't got a grade B, and he's too busy playing soccer. And she said, well, he has been playing in the Millwall team, and he said, yes, but another boy down the road is playing for Liverpool, and so his wife says, yes, but Liverpool wouldn't even give our son a chance to train, a chance to try to join the team because he's only 6 years old. You see the little boy sitting on the kitchen counter, sort of eating an ice cream.
Oh my!
Yeah, yeah,
that's fantastic. I would love to take your classes.
Sorry.
These sound like such fantastic classes. I really want to take your classes.
Well, my philosophy is if I'm not enjoying myself, then the students are not going to be either. So, yeah.
That's a very, very true philosophy. I wish more teachers would take that to heart.
Well,
Definitely.
and also having been in my job for 28 years, I've gained more and more freedom to do
Mm,
my own thing. So
it's always nice.
I have most of my classes are now content classes.
Mm,
So I have another
cool.
dream lecture that I teach, which is all about popular music from all
Wow.
around the world. Yes.
Really?
This week it's Canada.
Oh, so what are you playing from Canada?
Well,
What music?
I'm teaching them about Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen and
Ooh.
let me think, Neil Young and Shania Twain.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
And then I've given a whole list of more contemporary singers, and then their homework is to choose one of them and then to introduce them to the rest of the class. Yes.
That is so fun. I would like to take that class. I would like to teach that class, although I don't know much about music. So, oh, how
Yeah, I'm
fantastic.
learning a huge amount. See, that's what I enjoy as well, because I knew the names, but I really didn't know very much about the background of those
Mm,
musicians. And I mean, I knew the music,
mhm.
but yeah, and so next week is going to be Australia, and then it's New Zealand, and
Cool.
then Ireland, and we've done America and the UK.
Oh, fantastic. I'm just curious. I'm from the United States, so
Mm.
I'm curious who you featured from the US.
Okay, so we did Ella Fitzgerald, Aretha
Oh,
Franklin, yeah,
love it.
Taylor Swift, and Lady Gaga, and
Good
they
choices.
loved Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh,
They're
really?
such a beautiful voice, and Aretha
Right.
Franklin blew them away. Yeah, we did Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Buddy Holly. So we did a lot of the oldies. Oh, Elvis Presley, of course.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, from America. And I was so thrilled because they really enjoyed Muddy Waters. And
That's
he
cool.
was so influential, and
Mhm.
not so many people know about him. So here in Japan, a lot of the
Right.
students knew the music of Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry because
Mhm.
it's featured in Back to the Future and other kind of more
Sure.
contemporary media that they're familiar with. And they knew some of the music of Little Richard because it's used in TV commercials and
Mhm.
things like that. Yeah, but they didn't know about the background to those artists. And yes, and then they were looking at the contemporary artists. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
and
that's
then
exciting.
yeah. Oh, we did Billie Holiday as well.
Oh,
Yes, yes,
fantastic.
yes, yes. So it's a chance to introduce them to musicians they probably wouldn't come across. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Oh, that's so much fun. So I'm
Mm.
curious, how did you get into ELT to begin with?
Ah,
Like
well,
what's been
yes.
your
So,
career path?
I'm a language lover.
Mm,
So, from a very young age, I knew I wanted to travel. And we had to study French in high school. So, from the age of 12, 11, I started learning French. And it was fun and it was easy. It came to me easily. Yeah. And then we had to start a second language, and that had to be Latin, um, which wasn't so much fun. It would have been more fun if we had more interesting materials.
mm,
But Caesar's Gallic Wars did not turn me on very much as a young teenage woman. Yeah. But then I started learning German, and that was a lot more interesting because we were doing German literature, and that
wow.
was interesting as well. Thomas Mann and Brecht. Yeah, Bertolt
Mhm.
Brecht was very interesting. Um, and then when I was choosing my university courses, I loved English literature as well. But I thought, well, I'm always going to be able to read English.
Mhm.
So why don't I work on my French and German and get them up to a higher level? So that's what I did. I did French as my major and German as my subsidiary subject.
Wow.
And the university I chose was one that at that time was quite unusual, had a study abroad program, because I wanted to go and live overseas and I wanted to spend a year in France. And they had it all set up that we would be assigned to a high school and that we would be a language assistant in the high school. So I had a job and I had accommodation and the chance to spend, well, it was an academic year in France. And it was so exciting. And after I graduated, I tried my hand at a couple of things. No way, didn't suit me. Especially the Citibank. No.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That I saw an advertisement for a job in Portugal, in a small coastal town south of Lisbon, and they needed a teacher, but I didn't need to have teaching qualifications. My university degree was going to be enough, and I didn't even need to speak Portuguese. And so I applied and got the job. I don't know how many other people applied, but yeah. So yeah, I found myself in Portugal, it's a delightful town, and a small language school run by a rather crazy Portuguese guy who liked to pass himself off as British. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
that's a character.
but yeah, the job came with a flat, a shared flat with another teacher.
Wow.
And I had already made friends because the other teachers were so friendly. And they introduced me to their Portuguese friends who had no interest in learning English at all. There was a fisherman, a house painter. They did all kinds of stuff. There was an intellectual guy, yes, but he didn't want to speak English. And so I was able to pick up Portuguese very fast. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was tremendous fun. I just felt I was on holiday the whole time. Um,
Oh, that's fantastic.
because the teaching was fun, the students were delightful.
Mhm.
The second year I was there, I went to another language school was opening. So the friend of one of the friendly teachers was opening another language school, and I was poached or headhunted, and I did jump ship. But it was great because they were very accommodating and they allowed me to take a teacher training course in Lisbon once a week that the British Council was putting on. And that really helped me get an idea about how to go about teaching,
Mm,
and also made me realize I needed a qualification in this if I was going to do this seriously. So
right.
after 2 years, I went back to the UK and did a postgraduate teacher training diploma.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
and that gave me the qualification I needed for my next job, which was in China.
Right.
So off to more adventure. Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
you were actually in China in the early 80s, just as China was opening up, right?
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that experience?
Wow. It was so interesting. When we
Right.
arrived, we flew into Beijing,
Mm,
and at that time there were very few cars in Beijing. It was just bicycles everywhere, and people like us foreigners we were called foreign experts. Yeah.
mm,
We were driven everywhere by chauffeur. Yes, you felt like the
wow.
bee's knees. Yes. um,
Cool.
um, then so we had a few days orientation, and we were under the wings of the British Council. And I don't know if you know Alan Maylie. He's one of my heroes, EFL heroes. Yes,
Okay.
textbook writer and EFL philosopher. And he was very kind, and he gave us a lot of guidance. And then we were sent off to our various colleges. There were 6 of us. There was a young married couple, and then there were 2 other women who went independently by themselves to different colleges. And then my colleague, another woman, and I were sent to this agricultural college. And this was in Changsha in Hunan province, which is south of the Yangtze River. It's quite far south, not very south, but it's in the south of China, in the middle.
Okay.
And it's famous because Mao Zedong was a student there. That's where he studied.
Ah,
And and famously swum across the river. And well, we were outside the city, which was a blessing because, yeah, the city, I mean, at that time, it was very ugly. Yes. And there wasn't really very much of great beauty in Changsha. The countryside was very beautiful. It was completely rural, almost no mechanization at all. They were using oxen and bullocks to plow the fields, and it was manual labor. But it was opening up. So every morning in our college, there was a free market. So the local farmers were bringing their produce, and so we could buy fresh vegetables and fish and meat and things like that.
Wow.
At the beginning, we had a cook and a cook's assistant. They insisted, but we said we don't need this. No, please, we don't want to have a cook, because they were cooking food that was far too rich for us, and we just wanted to have some independence. Just a second, the sun's coming through. I'm just going to put the blind down.
No problem.
It's setting. Day. Yeah. So my colleague and I negotiated. It took lots of meetings, but we managed to be able to cook and shop for ourselves in the end. Yeah. So daily life was quite tough, except that they had prepared some, by their standards, luxurious apartments, very basic by our standards. We did have a Western style toilet and a bath. That was very nice. We had a bedroom. And
wait, those weren't common? Like having a bedroom was not common in China?
You had one room if you, yes, yeah. So I remember visiting other professors' accommodation, and where I was living was where a professor would live with their family.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah, so I had and Hilary downstairs below, she had the same as me, and so we were occupying 2 family units basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yes. It was interesting because we arrived in September, and then it quickly got a lot colder, and it looked like the Chinese were putting on a lot of weight, but actually the way you combat the cold in China in the 1980s was you put on more and more layers. So we realized that the heating wasn't efficient. And so we would have to end up with lots of layers with the army coat on top of everything. Yeah. And in the classroom, we had to laugh because they were using these coal brick stoves. So they would beat up coal, pound it into a kind of dust and mix it with sand so that it would burn for longer, and make these sort of charcoal bricks that were piled up inside a stove. It was like a tube.
Oh, wow.
And then it would be a light, and it would burn slowly and let off heat, and let off even more smoke. And they had this kind of contraption, this chimney that would come out and then go through one of the open windows to release the smoke and the carbon monoxide. But even with the chimney, we had to open all the windows from time to time just to clear the air, because everyone was getting
Oh, wow.
But yeah, but it was, yeah, there were some very amusing moments. The Chinese students that I had were absolutely wonderful. Yeah, they're wonderful people. Very resilient.
What kind of materials did you use for those classes? You couldn't have much access to, textbooks and like a mimeograph machine or something?
No, it was very much thinking on your toes. And I was teaching agricultural scientists and one doctor who had been sent from far away. Goodness knows why. They thought he needed to improve his English. The agricultural scientists, 1 or 2 of them did need English because they were writing papers in English, and maybe they would have a chance to present overseas at some point. But some of the others were really getting on, and I think my lessons were a perk. So thank you for your good services for all these years. My colleague Hilary was training people to become English teachers.
Oh, wow.
But first of all, they had to learn to speak English. I mean, one of them could speak German really well, but he didn't have very much English. So
Wow.
we were asking ourselves, so why are we here? A lot of the time we were asking ourselves that. But one of the most successful things I did with my students was some skits. I did have a textbook with some kind of really, by our standards, very corny comedy skits, but it was fantastic because they understood the rather slapstick comedy, and because they were acting a role, they weren't being themselves. They began to lose their inhibitions, and because they were going to perform their skits for the other class, they were going to have an audience, they had motivation to really work on their pronunciation. And so they were quite prepared to do it again and again and again to get it right.
Oh, how fun.
Yes, so that worked very well. Yes, yeah. I don't remember a great deal about the content of other classes, but that I do remember. Yeah.
That's very neat. And did you
Hmm.
have an extensive like security clearance before you could go there, or was it fairly easy
Well,
since you
we had
were with the
to,
British
yes, we had
Council?
to have a visa
Mm.
processed. Yes, presumably they did background checks, but I mean, I was so young. I was in my 20s, mid 20s by then. I don't think there was very much to investigate, and I hadn't been politically active as a student. Yeah. Yes, I don't know. We weren't really privy to
Okay.
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
but we were watched. We
Oh,
knew our
really?
phones were tapped. We could hear that. Yeah,
Oh my.
so we didn't have private phone conversations. And there
Interesting.
was a clear discrimination between us and there was a Filipino couple that were working in Changsha and who we met with. There was a New Zealand couple, husband and wife, teaching in another college, and we got to know them and the Filipino couple.
Mm.
And we invited them to our college one weekend day to come and hang out with us and have a meal with us. And we got a knock at the door, and they were very unhappy about the Filipino man being there. They didn't
Really?
trust. Yes. We
Oh
said, but he's
my.
married. He's married to her. And, and there's another man here, this New Zealand man. What do you think is going to happen? You know, but they really, because they were kind of
Wow.
lower class in their eyes of, yeah, the Filipino couple were delightful. And we were
Mm.
so embarrassed on their behalf. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yes.
Oh,
But
that's
they had
interesting.
this sort of hierarchy that going on in their minds about who, yes, if they were white, they were perfectly acceptable. And if they weren't, then yeah.
Have you been back to China since then?
Well, last year was the first time I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
really set foot in China. I passed through
Wow.
it on the way to the UK.
Mm.
Last year, I took a bunch of students, or a couple of students, not a bunch, for a singing and speech competition at
Oh,
a
wow.
university in southern China.
Mm.
Yeah. And I knew how much China had changed, but it was a bit of a culture shock to see, oh, this doesn't look so different from Taiwan or even Japan. Yes.
Right.
And
Wow.
in some ways, they were even more technologically advanced. I mean, on this campus, because in China, the universities are all the students are on the campus, they're living on the
Mm.
campus. And so the campuses are huge.
Mhm.
And to get around the campus, they were using these electronic motorbikes
Oh,
and
really? Huh.
totally soundless. And there are real minutes you don't hear them. They're zooming around. Well, it's motor
Wow.
scooters, really. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but electronic scooters, yeah, electronic bicycles as well. But the students seem to favour the scooters.
Those are becoming popular here too, and they're,
Yeah.
yeah, frightening. They can overtake
But
you in a second, right?
I was so impressed by the level of English
Mm.
and the level of awareness of Western culture. The singing competition, they were singing all the latest stuff.
Oh,
They
wow.
did a Queen medley of Queen songs, absolutely brilliantly. And at the same time, they were singing Charlie Puth or whoever else, Bruno Mars or whoever else. I
Wow.
was bowled over. Yeah, and yeah, there were lots of fun. The Chinese students on that campus. Yeah,
That's very
but
cool.
interestingly, when I asked, so what do you think about the situation in Hong Kong? Then
Mm.
I got the party line. Yes,
Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah, they were very open about talking about cultural issues,
Mhm.
but anything political.
Right, right. I'm
So
not
I didn't
surprised.
push the matter. I didn't want them to get into trouble.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Did you ever encounter anything quite like that in the early 80s when you were there? Or was the English level just
No,
not at the
because
level where you could?
they were totally shut off.
Mm.
Um, it was so sweet because because we were foreigners, we had this special currency, and which allowed us to buy special products for export or for foreign consumption in
Oh,
China
wow.
in the friendship stores. And so we
Oh.
could buy Coca-Cola, the real thing, and export quality beer. And
Oh.
we invited some of the students around to entertain them and to say thank you for all of being such lovely people.
Mhm.
And we offered them Coca-Cola, and they were convinced they were getting drunk. Never had it before, and they said, "Oh,
Oh, amazing.
we're going to get drunk," and then, "Oh, did you?" We didn't tell them that.
Oh,
So they
that
were
must have been
so
amazing.
innocent, so cut off from because there was no internet
Mm.
at that time.
Right.
Yeah, but the young Chinese these days, they get round the fact there's no Google. Doesn't seem to bother them at all. They seem to have
Mm.
access to everything they need. Um, and I was equally blown away when I went to Russia the year before. Um, they knew about everything that was going on in the world. Yes.
Right. Oh,
Yes.
that's
So I
very
really
cool.
thought that, there would be very much more of a blackout on world news, but they were very much aware of what was being said about Russia and what everyone was saying about everyone else. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, then what motivated you to leave China? And I know, let's see, next you took the Trans-Siberian Express back home, right? So
Yes.
you mentioned that. That's amazing. How was
Well,
that and why did you leave?
okay. So we were expected to stay for 2 years, but to be frank, we were sent by the British government. We were the first 6 for them to send in, and we were kind of being used as political pawns to sort of curry favor with the Chinese government.
Oh,
But
wow.
things hadn't been thought through properly. And as I said earlier, I certainly felt that I was being used as a perk. And
Mm.
the only time I could teach to undergraduates was once a week. And they were the ones that really were going to be using English, and they were very keen.
Mm.
And I really wanted to teach them. And I kept saying to the college, why can't I teach them more? I don't mind teaching more hours, just let me teach them more. But they weren't going to let me. And so it was that frustration that we complained to the organization called Voluntary Service Overseas. We complained to them, to the British Council in Tokyo, and said, no, we're not being used properly, and you
Mhm.
should really think this through a bit more. And so they said, okay, we understand, and we'll pull you out. They replaced us with others who weren't going to argue so much, but we just
Wow.
felt it was time to go. Yes, yeah. And my colleague Hilary had been in Africa before going to China, and she found the culture shock. She couldn't adapt to the Chinese way of indirectness. Yeah. And oh, hi, Curtis.
Hey, Curtis.
Nice to
Welcome.
see you. Yeah. Yeah. So Hilary couldn't, she found it really quite stressful, and she was more than ready to get out. Yeah. And
Wow.
so she left before me, and I spent a couple of weeks traveling around China on my own. They gave me a travel permit to go to certain places, and I was very glad I did that. That was fantastic. And then jumped on the Trans-Siberian Express.
Wow. That must have
Yeah.
been amazing at that time. Hard, I would imagine too.
Well, for the first few days, it was absolutely fabulous because it was really well stocked from
Oh,
Russia with all of the dairy products that all of the people like me who'd been in China for a long time were craving. And so for the first few days, we binged on yogurt and milk and cheese and things like that. By the time we were halfway through Mongolia, it was gonna, yeah, we were down to the noodles and the rice.
Wow.
No, it was fun. And there were some very interesting people. And one of whom was visiting a journalist friend in Moscow. And I had a transit visa for Moscow. And so I was invited to stay on the journalist floor in their apartment with some of the other people on that train. And so a bunch of us had a few days free accommodation in Moscow before we had to move on. Yeah. So
Wow. That must have been really amazing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the scenery was fabulous. At that time, we weren't allowed to leave the station platform because in Mongolia was still closed countries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Russia was still USSR.
Right,
yeah, so we couldn't get out and wander around, but we could interact with the people who used to come to the platform and sell things through the windows. And so we did get some quite interesting local produce that we bought from the platforms. Yeah. And yes, and it just made me realize how vast the area is and how vast Russia is. Yeah. And then Moscow was so modern in comparison to Beijing.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And then going through to East Berlin, that seemed even more modern. And then when I went through to West Berlin, I'm back in the West. Yes. It was that was real culture shock. Yeah.
Sure. At least you had that gradual transition.
It was. Yes. Do it that way.
Wow.
Yes.
So after that, you ended up in Brazil. Did you get to use your Portuguese again?
Yes. So that was fun. Yeah. Yes. So that was recruitment through the British Council. And I was working for an organization called the Brazilian Society of English Culture, but we were looked after by the British Council in Rio de Janeiro. And that was a lovely job because this school had branches all around Rio, in the different areas of Rio. And so we were teaching in a different place each day. And so different kinds of students in different areas and different kinds of classes. And I had quite a lot of freedom about what I taught there as well. That's where I got into using movies for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we were looking at movie adaptations of literature with my high level students. So we were reading the original and then watching the movie adaptation and sort of working out why they changed certain things and what was the effect. And yes, yeah.
That's very cool. And you mentioned that after that, you got to teach at other countries in Central and South America.
Well, I visited, yes. So one of the best things about working in Brazil is that they have really long holidays.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, and it depended on when Carnival fell, because nothing starts up again until after Carnival. And so in some years it would be February, but some years it was March. So things would end at Christmas time. And then, so I would have from Christmas through to the end of Carnival. And so sometimes that was 2 to 3 months. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I got to travel an awful lot in South America. Yes, all around Brazil and most of the other South American countries. And then a big trip with my pal Linda. We both left at the same time to return to the UK and get ourselves more qualifications on our career ladder. But we both loved it so much that we thought, well, it's going to be easier if we both leave together. And we traveled through a bit through Brazil, then through South and Central America together, and then England. Yeah. So I haven't been back because it's so far from Japan. And we almost had an opportunity. Curtis and I were going to go in June this year.
Oh, really?
Yes, we've got a marvelous colleague in Brazil called Mirella, and she's a powerhouse of energy and ideas. And she was putting a conference together, and we were going to go. And yes.
Virus hit.
So we see Mirella online, like we're talking now, but I haven't been back. But I really, really want to go back.
Did you keep up with your Portuguese?
Sort of, yes,
Okay.
as much as I can. Yeah. Yeah, I can still understand it a lot.
Wow.
It's a bit rusty. My French is still very much there. I have very many more opportunities to speak French with colleagues at the university. There were one or two Portuguese speakers, but they've retired now. But one of the Spanish teachers speaks to me in Spanish, and I reply in Portuguese. We understand each other perfectly okay. Yeah. Fantastic. Yes, because I can understand Spanish, but it's very difficult for me to stick in Spanish. The Portuguese comes through. Yeah, I could do Spanish when we were in South America, but yeah,
I'm sure
now the Portuguese is stronger.
So how many languages do you actually speak?
Well, the Chinese is gone. Oh, sure. Yeah. But I would say so. My first foreign language, I say these days, is French. Japanese is good, but I can talk about more things in French than I can in Japanese. In Japanese, I'm really good at anything to do with university and university teaching, extremely good at childbirth and pregnancy and childhood illnesses and child raising and anything, that kind of stuff. But get me onto politics and history and I don't have the vocabulary. Yeah. Sure. And one of the reasons I'm a strong advocate of extensive reading is because I've always struggled to learn to read Japanese because I arrived as an adult. Very soon after I arrived, I got pregnant and had my first child and never had that time to study Japanese because you really have to study hard to learn to read Japanese. And so my reading level is adequate for dealing with university stuff, greatly enhanced these days by Google Translate.
Oh, sure. The lifesaver.
But it's not very good motivation for me to get on and study the kanji more. Maybe when I retire, but I rather suspect no. Yeah, but I can happily read a novel in French, and I can read Portuguese quite comfortably. Yeah. Yes, so I can read French for pleasure still and do. Yeah, so yeah, and that's because I had to read so much literature for French, and I studied Portuguese literature when I was in Brazil to get a British A-level in Portuguese, so I'd have a qualification in Portuguese. Yeah, so I've read a lot in Portuguese too, and actually it was reading Tintin comics in Portuguese that got me going.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mentioned at the beginning of our talks, I had these wonderful friends who had no interest in speaking English, and they were really good at talking to me in Portuguese. And so I was picking up all of the sounds and quite a lot of vocabulary. I mean, my first Portuguese word was cinzeiro, ashtray. I've never smoked in my life, but there was an ashtray on the cafe table. So it was the first thing they pointed to. So yeah, but fun. With the Tintin comics, I was able to follow the story, and then the spoken language was there in written form. And Portuguese is like Spanish, it's completely phonetic. So once you know the sound symbol correspondence, you know how to pronounce it. And so I was off. Yeah, I could sound out the words and, oh, I know what that means. I've heard that before. And I could see it in the picture. And yeah, and then I could ask my friends what this means and that means, yeah, when I saw them. Yeah, so
that's really impressive.
Thank Tintin comics for, yeah, because they were fun.
Well,
and I can understand why a lot of people get into Japanese through manga. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yes. I actually tried that with Korean. It doesn't work so well for me, but
well, I'm not a manga reader. I can read and I can read comics, but manga I find I don't know where to look.
Yes. its
I
own
need either
language.
text or pictures. Yeah.
Mm. So I'm curious, what
Amanda, there are some, oh, sorry, there are some extensive reading Japanese books,
Yes, there
Ooh.
are.
just a
Yes.
few,
Yes,
just a few,
yes.
like
And I
5 or
haven't
so,
got
right?
round to them yet. Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
So what convinced you to go back and get a doctorate in music?
So basically I wanted to learn more. There I was teaching media studies and popular culture, but I was feeling a bit of a fraud
Mm.
because all my qualifications were in language teaching and linguistics and applied linguistics. And so I thought I really need to learn more about this myself. And so I knew that, well, I'd found that music video was something that hadn't been studied a great deal. And it was something that the students were very interested in. And I could relate to the students through that medium.
Mm.
And so I thought I would investigate the way that Japanese students are watching and using music videos and interpreting them as well.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so I applied to University of London Goldsmiths and was accepted into the media studies department and assigned a supervisor who promptly went off on sabbatical. So they said to me, can you find another supervisor? And so I looked around, and in the music department was one of my heroes, a guy whose books I'd loved and who'd helped me understand music video. And so I asked if he would be my supervisor, and he said yes, of course. And he was delightful to work with. And I think I actually did better, yeah, ending up in the music department. Although I'm not a musician, I don't play anything. I enjoy listening and I enjoy singing in a choir, but I would not say I'm a musician. Yeah. So I have this PhD in music, which sounds very grand, but basically it's in audience studies. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So what was your dissertation on, or do you call it a thesis? Your
Yeah,
final big document
my
thing.
thesis. Yeah.
Okay.
So at University of London, it's all by thesis. So it was just one very long. I think it's somewhere behind me on one of those shelves. It was about Western music in Japan, how Western popular music first of all came into Japan, how Japanese people have been, how receptive they've been to Japanese music, and how they've been enjoying it, and then moving gradually towards the medium of music video, and looking at a little bit of the development of music video, and then, but the main focus was on focus groups who were watching music videos, and I was recording them on video and recording their discussions afterwards and what they made of this and that, and analyzing the way that they were seeing the Western artists through their Japanese eyes. And it was very, very interesting.
Wow.
Some of the things I found. And also, because this was qualitative research, I had to also analyze a lot of what was going on in the focus groups and my part in this, and yes, all the hierarchy, because Japanese culture is similar to Korean culture. There's so much hierarchy going on in group work, and most of my volunteers were either my own students, who I knew well and who knew me well, so that they would be relaxed and very open to talk about stuff. And then we have English Studying Society, ESS Club. And I've been the academic advisor of that for over 20 years. And so I know the students. Each year I know all of the students in the club. And so I recruited other students, because my students were all English majors, but I wanted to know about students from other faculties who were also listening to Western music. So I had done this big university-wide survey to start off with, and found, yes, a lot of students are listening to Western music, English language music, and more than a lot of the Japanese researchers were saying. So Japanese researchers looking at the consumption of Western music by Japanese audiences were saying that Japanese young people are not interested in Western music. They're interested in J-pop and K-pop, but actually, no, they're wrong. If they'd only done a big survey, yes, they would have found that they were misguided in their ideas. And so, having established that there was a big audience, then I wanted to find out why they were enjoying it and what they were getting out of it and what they were seeing in it. And it was very interesting.
Oh, that's
I had
super
some
fascinating.
really fun moments as well, like they were discussing, for example, yes, so an artist like Katy Perry, who in her music videos dresses very scantily, and so what would it be like if it were a Japanese artist dressed like that? And they said, oh, no, really, it would be really bad taste. Yes, yeah. And yeah, so sometimes some of the Korean female artists were getting kind of a little bit borderline for them about whether that was acceptable for the way that they were dressed and dancing around in their music videos. It was kind of the Japanese young men thought that it was great. The Korean artists were very, very attractive. Yes, but getting back to they had a definite ideas about what was acceptable in a Western music video context, what wouldn't be acceptable in a Japanese music video context. Yeah. And there's this huge group called AKB48. Okay. And when I showed them some of the DVD stuff, which is not shown, the DVD stuff is more risque. And it's only for only for those who have the money to buy the DVDs. They're not cheap, and it's not shown online. They're very controlling. These companies, that management companies, are very controlling, and some of AKB48 is really kind of borderline. And they were very shocked because they'd never seen that, and their image of AKB48 was, oh, you're so nice, and we're sort of like schoolgirls. We dress in school uniform and we shake hands, but we don't do anything risque, like in the locker room naked. No, which one of the DVDs was. Yes, yeah.
Oh, really?
It was very clever because every time you were going to see something moved in front, and you never actually did, but the implication was that they were naked in the locker room. Yeah.
How long ago was this?
So this was around 2012, 2013 when I was working on that. 2012, 2013.
Do you think it's changed a little bit since then?
Probably not a great deal. No, I don't think so. Yeah, certainly not their attitudes, I don't think. Yeah. Yeah, I think there seems to be a clear idea of what is and isn't proper among the Japanese young people.
Interesting. Did you, to get your doctorate, did you actually have to go back and forth between Japan and the UK? Or did you just take a leave from your university for a while?
I took a sabbatical. I took a sabbatical for 1 year, and that was great because it gave me a big kickstart, and I was able to take classes in quantitative and qualitative research. I was able to see my supervisor regularly. And then after that, I could just do the work by myself because I was researching Japanese people, and it was better to be in Japan. Right. I used to go over once a year anyway to see my parents, and so I could keep in touch with my supervisor. Yeah, and yes, it wasn't very demanding. I was glad that it was all on the thesis and I didn't have to take required courses. Yeah. Right.
Well, we are actually out of time, but if you have just a few more minutes, I didn't get a chance to ask you what brought you to Japan in the first place.
And
why did you stay?
Right. So, as I said, Linda and I very, very, very reluctantly left Brazil. And my aim was to, before we left Brazil, one of my former colleagues from Brazil had come to Kyoto in Japan and was working at the British Council. And he'd written to tell me that he really liked it here, and they were looking for another teacher. And he thought I might like it if I was thinking of moving on. And so I applied and I got the job. So I knew that I had a job in Japan before I left Brazil,
Oh,
and that it would be starting in September 1988. And so I had from March until September to get back. I took most of that time very slowly through South and Central America to get back. So the reason, it was very mercenary. I needed to do an MA if I was going to get on in my career. I couldn't do an MA on my salary in Brazil. I was living a very luxurious life in Brazil with the Brazilian currency, but outside South America, it wouldn't have covered anything like the cost of doing an MA. And so Japan was going through its boom at the time. It was a bubble economy, and I knew that I could earn enough money to cover the costs. There were two other factors which played very strongly into this. Among the most delightful students I taught in Brazil were the Japanese, and they were so friendly and kind and would invite me to their homes. And when I traveled down to the south part of Japan, of Brazil, where there are a lot of Japanese people have settled, it was so interesting, and it was so different. So I was very interested in Japanese culture, and having been in China previously, I knew that I would probably enjoy being in Asia again. And so yes, and the moment I stepped off the plane in Kyoto, I just felt at home. Yes, I thought it would be a bigger culture shock, but culture shock in Japan comes up on you, creeps up on you slowly. At first, you don't realize you're doing anything wrong or that there is anything wrong, because Japanese people are so polite and they will bend over backwards to avoid any embarrassment on anyone's behalf. And so it was really some time before I realized how often I'd been putting my foot into it.
no. Can you give us an example?
Sorry?
Can you give us an example of a time when you didn't even know you were being offensive and yet you were?
Right. I think just I'm pretty sure when I was looking for apartments right at the beginning, and the young lady that was assigned to help me, and I was being very frank about my opinions of certain places, and oh no, I couldn't possibly live here, and things like that. And she was being very, very polite, sort of intermediary between me and the owners of these. Yes, and she was, expressing in far politer words what I was saying to her. Yes, she did it. I think she did me many good turns.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone over our hour. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much for sticking with us. Do you have
I'm
any?
sorry, you have to shut me up because.
Oh no, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to keep talking at any time. Do you have any closing thoughts or?
One thing that we were going to talk about, and that was being a working mum.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if you're a working mum, but
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm very curious about this family work life balance that people can have.
I was thinking about this today. So if I was asked about this, what would I say to all of you working mums out there? You're going to feel guilty the whole time. You're going to feel guilty that you're not giving 100% to the job, you're not giving 100% to your family, and you're letting everyone down. But that's the way it is. Yeah. If you're going to embark upon this, you have to make sure that the father of your children is on board and is willing to do 50-50 share of the responsibility on the home front, and then things will work themselves out. Yes, but be prepared for the guilt.
So I am kind of curious. Your husband is Japanese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And was it
Yeah, he's
difficult?
Japanese. Yes.
Was it difficult to get him to take on 50% of the household and like the more, you know, feminine roles? I've seen some conflicts in Korea that have emerged from exactly that kind of the splitting of household duties.
Yes. Well, there has to be give and take in all relationships.
Mm,
I wouldn't have married him if he had been a very traditional Japanese man, because that would never have worked. Yeah, but he's not.
sure.
And he is very flexible, very open-minded. And he did start working freelance so that he could take on more of household duties. And
That's nice.
and he is very flexible. If I can't do dinner, then, you know, he will do it. We do it sort of, maybe I do dinner more often than he does, but he'll do other stuff as well. Yeah. He deals with the garbage. I clean the toilets. I think it's similar kind of split in most households. Yes, that things that the men do, things that the women do. But yeah. But if I can't do stuff, I'll just ask him to do it. And yeah. And
It's a partnership.
I
It's a
think
true
so. You
partnership.
have to view
Oh,
it as a
that's nice.
partnership, and then just be open and willing to do your bit when it's your turn. I think, yeah. Mm.
Fantastic.
Hmm.
Well, I think on that note, we are a bit over time. I'm so sorry for keeping you
Yeah.
late, but thank you so much. And thank you very much for joining us, Curtis. Don't log off, but I'm going to say thank you all for watching. And thank you again for
Thank you for listening.
sharing your experiences. It's been really fascinating. So see you all next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.